What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Essential Credentials Podcast, episode 94. Happy to be back with you on a Tuesday, our Tuesday slot. And for the second time, it's been a long time since we've had another guest on here. We've got a very important person within the 90s collecting community that has decided to come join us, along with Frank Tom, 3/4 of Frank Thomas's body. So we're to have our first guest in a while in here, especially a baseball card collector, someone that we've all learned so much from, look up to as well. Brandt, welcome to the podcast for the first time. How you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And then Greg, thanks for doing the legwork to get him in here. Fellow Frank Thomas collector. So I know you guys are going to have your bro moment here at some point, which will be nice. Greg, everything doing good? You excited about this episode?
I am. It's nice to have a Frank Thomas collector on. Me and Brandt have talked for many years now in relation to how long I've been in the group. So it's really cool to finally catch up with him on the show. I'm excited.
I agree with that. Yeah, this is, I think, the first time I've talked to him as well. Obviously, I've seen his face and heard his voice on the breaks many times. But it's awesome to have you on here.
Forgot about those, man. I wish I could do them, man, but you can't with the prices.
Dude, I know, right? But we've seen some incredible cards get pulled. I actually remember when he pulled, Alan, do you remember when he pulled the Frank Thomas gold embossed refractor from a box? Sorry, Greg. I know that's okay. I don't have a PMG, so y'all can just like whatever. But do you remember that, Alan? That was a huge moment.
I remember missing it. Yeah, I remember I just missed it. So that I heard about it immediately, though. It was a huge deal.
There's a third, man. My inbox was so full after that with Frank, dude. So pissed that they didn't buy that spot.
Yeah, that's right. Now, was your buddy Zach? Do I have that name right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure he's still stoked. I hope he has it still, because
I actually sold it for him.
Oh,
wow.
Okay then. Well, That rolls into our discussion really well today, actually. The three of us, we're excited to have you on, obviously, because we have some history with you as a 90s collector. And when we jumped in, you had been around for quite a while, and we're going to hear about that and kind of hear about, what became of your Frank Thomas collection. But, I think, really excited to kind of go through the history of it and then get into what happened first. Alan, what are you most looking forward to hearing about from Brandt now that we've had all this time to talk to him?
Well, Brandt and I are local to each other, but we've never run into each other. I've run into Zach and a couple of Brandt's friends at some of the shows here in Fairfield. Never happened to actually cross paths, which is a shame because, like you were saying, Brandt is one of the most respected dudes in the entire baseball 90s insert community. He was there before a lot of us, super knowledgeable, and definitely shared that knowledge when I came in 2019. I still remember talking about prices being maybe too high compared to what they were all the way back in 2019 when we first started talking. So it's exciting for me to just be able to talk to Brandt sort of face to face electronically.
Is it 2019 when you started up? Seems longer.
Yeah, it was 2019. And, part of the reason I know that you're solid is I sold you a card from like 97 as one of the mirror image fusion cards. And I didn't realize that the embossing was supposed to match with the ink because I was so new to the 90s. I thought it was offset on purpose. And you were like, it's cool, dude. Just keep the money. I'll sell it. Somebody's probably going to think this is an oddball and is going to think it's really cool. So I was like, wow, that's really nice.
Oh, yeah. I do.
So we go way back to 2019.
I think if I remember correctly, Greg and I had made our way in there by 17-ish, 18, somewhere in there. And obviously, right, Greg, we get in there and you immediately start sizing up like who knows what, because I'm going to need some people to kind of get me up to speed here. What am I looking at? What am I looking for? And, Greg, I feel like Brandt was one of the first guys. He was always posting, very, enthusiastic about what he was talking about and always happy to help. Is that kind of your memory as well?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first got back, looking at Frank Thomas cards, Tim Salmon, nobody had Tim Salmon really, but Frank Thomas, I know Brandt was one of the key guys who was posting. And then I got invited to a Frank Thomas group, and it just kind of opened the eyes up, refreshed the memory banks with all the stuff that I did remember. I was now seeing again, and all the stuff I didn't know about, I was learning about. And Brandt was always one of the main contributors to that. And I remember asking him questions. What is this? Like, how, how long have you been in collecting? Just so many questions, sharing back and forth. And Brandt was always happy to help and talk. And I just one of the key players in the 90s group for me.
Right. Well, yeah, again, just wanted to give a little backstory on kind of how we know him so well. This is probably not going to be nearly enough time to kind of go through all that, but we're really excited, Brandt, to kind of hear a little bit about your collecting history and then moving forward from there. So I'll just kind of fire it off, and then we'll just go around with some different questions. I'm going to keep it really simple, Brandt. Your first memories of collecting 90s cards.
Are we going rare? I would want to talk 97 and to 99 rare, or you want to talk early 90s?
We are all hoping to hear the infamous story of a certain Frank Thomas card. I feel like that's kind of where it all got started. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So 1994, Gold Leaf Stars, my absolute favorite card ever, to come out. And reason being, me and my dad collected super hard from, I want to say we started about probably 92. And in 92, there really wasn't much out, as far as you had Donruss Elite, which back then, when did you ever see an Elite card? Even at a show, you couldn't, you know what I mean? So, I remember for a K, I think it was around my birthday in May. 94 Leaf was coming out, and on the front of every Tough Stuff, Beckett, you name it, even of the big sell sheet, was that Frank Thomas Gold Leaf Star insert. And to me, it was just like, 11-year-old kid. I'm like, I was probably actually 10, right before it released, or when I first saw the picture. I'm like, I gotta have that card. Like, my mind was like, whatever I have to do, I gotta have it. So anyway, the release comes. We were great friends with the shop owner there. He ordered a case. We ordered 3 boxes. Pre-ordered 3 boxes. So the day of the release, man, I can't tell you how excited I was when my dad picked me up from school. Like, man, we're going to crack these boxes in there. So we go in there, and there's like, probably 5 other people, same thing, waiting for their boxes. So we decided we were going to shred 1 box there, and then take the other 2 home. So we shred our box, of course. Who do we? Carlos Baer, like the last dude in the set I want, or anybody wants. So while we're sitting there, it's so long ago, it's hard to remember stuff. But all of a sudden, we're like talking with the owner, BS and whatever. And all of a sudden, a guy opening his box yells out something along the lines like, "Boom! I got it! I got it!" And I'm in my head, I'm like, "Please be good. Tell me you got it." And dude, I turn around, man, and I walk over there. He's got the Frank, and I'm just like, and then I knew my odds of a Frank being in my 2 boxes, or even a Gold Star in my 2 boxes, are gone. So anyway, we go home. We open the 2 boxes. We do pull another one. Out of everybody else that's in the set, who do I get? David Justice. I'm like, the bottom 2 dudes I would want in that set. Actually, no, Jack McDowell. I like Jack McDowell. I actually liked him because he was on the White Sox. So I would have been way happier with Jack McDowell. But like the 2 dudes, I hated the Braves because of the Marlins. I get David Justice. I hate the Indians because of the White Sox. I got the 2 dudes I'd rather just rip in half. I'm like, dude. So anyway, a couple weeks go by. I don't know how long. I can't remember how long it went by when my dad did this. But comes home, he used to always stop on, you remember back in the day, well, it's kind of like now, I guess. Every drugstore, gas station had baseball cards. They didn't until recently, back in the day. Up until COVID, you never saw it. But he would always buy me a pack or two of whatever. So he came home, I had a pack of 94 Fleer Ultra. I'm sitting outside. I think I was with we always played wiffle ball in the front. I know we were sitting on the steps. I can remember. I mean, like it's yesterday. Sitting on the steps. He's like, hey, I got you a pack of cards. Kind of walks nonchalantly into the house. All right, so I'm opening it. And I think what 94. I'm looking for like an RBI king or something along that. And all of a sudden, like I'm peeling back the fourth or fifth card, and I see this like the shiny stuff, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, there's nothing, because I think 94 was an insert every pack, and there's no insert that looks like that 94. Not that I can think, but I know I saw the hollow thing, and I peeled it back, and I saw like after the gold hollow foil, I could see that like green, and I'm like, no, like what's going on? I knew what card it was. I knew what it was because I had a Viagra and Justice. So I know what card this is. And I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, how did this Donruss product end up in Fleer? And then when I peel, I still remember, because in the card, Frank's batting glove is sticking out, which I had those batting gloves that had like, they look like, I don't know, skeleton bones or whatever. And I see that batting glove, and I wanted to like faint, And then I peeled it back. Once I totally peeled it back, it was the Frank, and I was just like, I was running around the yard screaming, and then I'm like, then I finally stop and I look at my dad, and he's at the top of the stairs because we lived upstairs in a kind of a duplex thing, and I'm like, how'd you get this? And then eventually he told me the story that the card shop owner, we were real tight friends. Actually, one of the real side story. He's my first original one of these before I cut his head off in the fan as a teenager. We got it from him, so he knew I was a huge Thomas collector. He knew I wanted that card. So after we left the shop after that break that day, after breaking our box or whatever, and that guy pulled it, he was able to buy it off of that guy, and then called my dad at work because they were close. They were always wheeling and dealing cards. So he was able to work a deal with my dad to get it for me. So, that's by far the best story as far as collecting, that I have by far. Way exceeds any other rarest insert card that I've ever owned or will own. And that's why I have probably, I think up to this point, I have like 103 of them.
Wow.
So I've covered 1% of the print run. I'm up to 1%. So that's not bad. So, and I think I have 3 full complete sets of them.
That's such an epic story because, you're combining your family, your cards, your favorite player, and for somebody you love and you look up to put something like that in a pack for you, knowing what it means, that is just like an epic moment for card collectors right there.
Yeah, man, it was definitely like, I still talk about it all the time. I can't explain like that. It would be like, I guess like for right now, it'd be like, someone putting like, what's your Grail, Matt, PNG?
If we're talking 90s, that's probably the card.
It'd be like, you imagine getting a PMG, like someone slipping that like in your random pack of like 92 tops or something. It's just like, because at the time that card booked for like 150, I think.
Right.
Or it booked. It was a big time card. And as an 11-year-old to have that card, you were like big time.
Right.
So
I kind of announced my return to the 90s to Alan in that way. I opened like a pack of Spider-Man cards, and I was like, Greg, what should I do? He goes, put it inside the pack and look like you're opening a Spider-Man pack. And I'm like, Alan, look at these cards. And there was the Mystique established hiding in there. He's like, that was fun.
I love how you put it in terms of what we would consider a holy grail now, because I forget what it's like to be 11. A card like that was unimaginable. You said you had to have that card, but I never even thought I could have cards like that. It just wasn't ever going to happen for me. I had to stare at it from afar. I wouldn't ever even be able to see the real card in person, like you were talking about. So, I mean, that's such a cool story. It shows where your passion comes from. Most collectors, most 90s collectors, remember their first baseball card, have formative stories just like that. And so we put so much emotion and memories into these cards. My question for you is, if I could go first, you were plugged in to the industry, right? Because you guys knew the shop owner, you guys knew how to buy cases and crack multiple boxes. Were you already wheeling and dealing cards at that time? Like, did you hang on to your Grail, or did you move it for something else along the way?
Oh, that exact card?
Yeah,
Oh no, I still have it.
you kept it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that thing. And in college, my whole collection got stolen. Um, my whole collection, but that card I always kept in a separate, a little this purple plastic box with like some of the, like a couple, like a 92, I it was like a Molitor or Juan Gonzalez or someone with a higher 90s insert stuff from my kid. I kept in a separate box in the closet away from that so it didn't get stolen. But yeah, I still have it here in the box somewhere. Probably yeah, I never moved that card. Like that card would never
So
go
did you ever set up at night at card shows? Were you ever interested in wheeling and dealing as a kid, or were you just pure collecting at that point?
No, I just collected at that point. I did do a lot of trading. I did so me and my dad were able to he got me 3 boxes of 93 SP, which I don't even want to talk about that because I don't even remember Jeter, didn't know who he was. My dad didn't either. We didn't care. All we wanted was platinum powers. That's all we cared about. We didn't care about those foil rookies. It was all the platinum powers were like the hype at the time. You know, the die cut. It was like one of the first die cut inserts. You know, so but I don't want to think because I Jeters, I probably, who knows what I would have did with those. But yeah, I was pure collecting, but we were able to. I do remember moving a full set of the platinum powers that I was able to collect and put those together from going to shows and breaking boxes and stuff. Trading, we did trade that for the 95, the deckle edged Thomas Elite. And that was like the only time because that was hard for me to trade anything. You know, it like once it was there, it was there. But I saw that 95, that deckle, the shiny edge, and I was like, all right. And I think my dad had to add a little something on top of it because that card, when that even came out, that was huge. You know, I booked for, you know, more than the platinum power combined.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't start wheeling and dealing till probably about 2008, somewhere.
Yeah, I mean that's a great lead. And let me say hello to a couple of the folks here that are in chat here with us. Before I ask my next question, we've got Matt McNeil checking in, Ohio lawyer. Good to see you again. Thanks so much. Yeah, the 98 Fusion Atomic finally came in. It's a big deal. Another story.
Oh, what? Yeah. Whoa, you actually got one?
I finally got one. You remember when I lost it because that dude either didn't center or
Well,
got on the way?
I remember the scam. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And there was drama, believe it or not, in another card. So I had a second shot at it and it fell through. It was as heartbreaking or more, if you can imagine. So finally, this is the third try and I finally got it. So appreciate that, Luke. I collect Ichiro. Glad you're here with us. Baseball card curmudgeon. What's up? Influencer pack. I think he's making a joke about one of the early 90s packs that you were talking about. And then we've got Junior saying what's up. So my question sort of relates to that. So you obviously love cards. Do you remember when your brain was able to switch off from all the emotion that you put into those cards and was able to actually sell one for money? And then how did you feel after you had your first big sale?
Oh, but did you talk about my recent, like the recent?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I'm leaving it open ended. I'm leaving it open ended, but you know, either way, when were you able to actually sort of separate yourself from the card and see it as like money that you could spend on something else?
Well, I guess I with my recent sell-off, I've been going back and forth for a while. I always look at these cards. I've always looked at it this way as I look at money as the cards and money aren't ours. It's just our time with them because we can't take it with us. Down the road. Eventually, someone else is going to get it, right? So I thought long and hard about it. Finally, I got the offer for someone messaged me on Instagram about the PMG and the number thrown at me from what I had put into it. It was a no-brainer. I thought about it long and hard. Yes, I love them. I love the card. I love I loved all the cards. But what I had to think to myself, what do they actually do for me? They sit in a box. I look at them. Yeah, they're fun to look at. But now that I think if I didn't have a kid, this would be a way different. This we wouldn't even be on here discussing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking into, what can I do with this money, with him, because people do say, hey, I'm going to pass this down to my kid. But you know what's going to happen when I pass it to him? It's going to someone else because he has no attachment to Frank Thomas. It's 90% of the stuff I get for consignment here is from people that passed away. It's the kids saying, hey, here's my dad's collection, my uncle's collection. They don't have a tie to, it's like us. None of it, like if our parents handed us down, let's say a 52 manual, what we're going to do. I mean, I would think most of us know what we're going to do with that. We're going to grade it and send it to Golden and say, rip this bad boy because I want 90s insert. I don't want 52 tops. At least I wouldn't. I have no attachment to Mickey Mantle. I didn't get to watch it play. So I started thinking long and hard, like I said, and they sit here in a box, and I'm like, I could use this money for a lot better things as far as memories with my kid, do fun things, and I found it, and I did think to where I would look at certain things, like my wife would bring it up. I would look at stuff in a store. Say we're in a store shopping, there's a TV, oh, she'd be like, oh, that's not bad. It's, $500. And I'll be like, that's way too much. And she's like, oh, you got no problem whipping out on a baseball card. Good point. I don't have a problem whipping out on a baseball card. Good point. So I did start thinking about that too. And how I would look at the cards is, at one point I was so into it, I would see a card pop up and it's like, okay, I gotta have that card. Like it's like I needed to breathe or something, I just felt like there's a little, with my kid, there's a lot more to life now, that I'd rather have the money to go do things with. And like I said, I got the offer for that PMG, and once I sold that, I sent it off, and I didn't feel bad at all. I had the money. I was like, okay. And once that first one was sold, it's like, okay, let floodgates flew, boom, And then and actually it was harder for me to sell my 24K because the 24K was bigger on my radar than that PNG. For some reason, I saw a 24K at a show one time, and that I personally think it's better looking. Just to shine the gold on it, I think better. That was tough to get rid of, but like I said, once the PMG left, I was like, let's bring me the money.
So, it's funny that you mentioned that because when we were talking to Matt about his A-Rod collection, he said, basically once he sold one or two things, it was just like floodgates opening up. And that's exactly what you just said is the floodgates opened up. So it's like once you detach from one big thing, it seems easier to detach to the next and the next, and it's easier
Yeah,
and easier
because
and easier.
that PMG, that's, I mean, as far as a basketball crossover, which I think has to do a lot with these prices, because that's a centerpiece of '90s is the PMG. And once, I mean, that was, once you hack that off, it's like, well, everything else really, let's do it, and once I started hitting up a bunch of people on Instagram, privately, the offers started flying in, and I was like, huh, I can't say no. For what I had invested, I
Mm.
would think it was a terrible decision not to sell. I mean, personally, I mean, I could hold on to them for another, what, 5, 10 years, but I'm 40 now, and I feel enjoy the money while I'm somewhat young, instead of holding on longer. And tomorrow's not promised, so you never know what can happen, so um I just think having the money to be able to do, I mean, the trips we've taken, the stuff I've been able to provide for my child, he's super into football cards and Pokemon right now, so I've got no problem going to shows with him and ripping boxes, ripping whatever with him, buying him Charizards, and just to see him have the same fun I had, because it's not as cheap as when we were kids.
Uh,
You gotta break out the wallet. Nowadays you go to a show, with Charizard, I'm like, he wants a Charizard and the sticker's like 150. I'm like, what? Like $150 for a Pokemon card? But now I know all about Pokemon, which has helped me. He's kind of got me into the knowledge of the selling part. If someone wants to sell their collection.
Well,
So yeah, like I said.
it was really interesting because I recently started a family as well, and it's a different animal when you have kids. You look at everything differently. You look at money differently. You look at your cards differently. So that's for sure. But the big reason that I wanted to talk to you was, what was it like for you to actually put like psychologically do it? You know what I mean? Because you said you didn't have to, you had to detach initially from PMG. Did you look at it? Were you like, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, talk to my wife, look at my kids? Or were you just like, oh, this number is high enough, we all hit that point, everybody hits that point sometime? And I remember when I heard that you were getting rid of your Frank Thomas collection, I couldn't believe it. My jaw dropped to the floor because Brandt Spriggs selling out Frank Thomas, that it was unthinkable to me for somebody who considers himself a true collector, who would never sell and they're going to bury me with my cards, right? I was just like, whoa, how could that happen? Like this is unbelievable. But then you take a step back and you think about what you were saying and the money and what you could use it for, and where we all are in our lives. Everybody has that moment where the benefit of selling exceeds the benefit of holding. So that's what you're saying. And I was wondering if all that went through your mind as you were trying to get rid of your prized PMG.
Uh, like I said, it's probably been a good year. It had been a good year until I sold that PMG, that I was really thinking, looking at them like, uh, and it was really slowing down. I mean, another factor is I had so much of it. It's like, what's next? Where, what? I got bored. It's like, okay, and um, the funnest part of collecting Frank for me wasn't these, you know, 4-figure, 5-figure cards. To me, I like to go back to 2000, about 2006 through 2009, when our COMC just had become a new thing, and I could stack up, as I was more about quantity then to fill my checklist, so I miss the $250 50 card mail days of different small inserts here and there. I miss that way more than I do, the bigger cards coming in, the big whales or whatever. That was more fun for me than, the, of course, stuff like, the Red Crusade sitting right here that was always fun to pick up, but it just wasn't as fun as the littler stuff to fill my. That makes sense. It just wasn't.
So was there a transition for you where
It
you
was.
went,
Go ahead.
sorry, was there a transition for you where it went from quantity to quality, where you got tired of getting all of these $2, $5 cards and you wanted to start getting the bigger stuff? Was that because I personally I found myself with Tim Salmon getting all of the quantity and then kind of, I know this is not exciting for me, and then moving on into that transition phase of getting the rare stuff and only focusing on that. Did that happen for you?
Yeah, I don't know when that started. I remember. So the only reason I really started going hard on the more rare stuff, the stuff numbered to 100 or less, is because I was paying real close attention to Jordan's market. And Jordan's market I knew always kind of eventually crossed over. And I saw his stuff, his legacies, like let's just say I remember my first big purchase of anything 100 or less was um, I bought 5 of the, was there 10? Because there's 3 in 97, there 3 in 97, 3 in 98, and 4 in 99 legacy collections. I think there's 3, 3, and 4. I think. It doesn't really matter. But I bought
Yeah.
6 of the run for $29 a piece from Burbank. And that was, to me, that was a lot of money. I was like, man, and that at the time they had been sitting there for months and months and months and months. So I finally bit the bullet and bought them all up. And then I think that's what started. And then I started keeping my eye out for anything 100 or less. I really was going after pretty hard after that.
What year would that have been?
Probably 2000 somewhere. I was playing poker for a living, so I want to say it was 2000, probably 2010, 2011,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
Did you really foresee the giant jump that we had even prior to COVID? Because when we three all kind of came into the group, the prices were coming up, but a PMG A-Rod, if I remember correctly, I still kick myself in the rear for this, was $250 buy it now. And I was like, I can't spend over 100 on a card. So whoops. But I mean, we all thought that was kind of expensive, right? But Alan, out of the three of us, he was always like, these things are going this way. Like, we need to get what we can now. When did you really kind of feel the change happen with the 90s inserts? Like, significant change?
I want to say when I saw stuff really, really going up. I mean, not to what they're anywhere close to where they are now, but when I saw them really was the summer of 2015 is when I can still remember when I bought a big collection, and I could really see the spike was coming. I knew eventually. To me, I always thought to myself, when I first were buying up the stuff 100 or less, I was like, these are going to be the new mantle type prices because are even better because there's only a certain limited number. Could you imagine if there was only 100, 1952, or there was a gold version of the 52 mantle rookie? I mean, I couldn't imagine how much it would be. So I knew this stuff, there's only a limited amount, of these cards. So I knew once people our age got to where pretty much, I mean, I'm 40, I'm sure we're all about same range. Once we have good jobs, disposable money, we're out of the college, scrounging for change, we've got a good check coming. I knew stuff was going to start going up because we have the money to splurge on it. And
Yeah.
that's happened times about 50 of what I would ever thought they've gotten to.
Yeah. When I first got back in 2017, the first card I bought was the 93 Finest Refractor of Frank Thomas. Because that was a card I couldn't afford as a kid. And now I have a job. And the first thing that I bought when I got back was that 93 Finest. And so, you're speaking about being 40 and having disposable income. Well, when I had that opportunity and I finally wanted a hobby, the first thing I went back to was baseball cards, and the 93 Finest was like etched in my brain. What is a card that you always wanted and you never could afford? And that was it. So now that you've sold a bunch of stuff, do you regret selling any specific card?
Nope.
Not okay.
Not a single. I'll say about the 93 refractor one. So I didn't have a copy of that until 2006. Frank Thomas was signing at it because he was on the A's. He was signing at the Bay Area Labor Day show that they used to have every year. And I wish I could turn back the hands of time because I was broke as a joke. I mean, I think I scrounged like everything I had to even have him sign like a jersey of mine. But I think I actually went down there with like $200. I mean, that at the time was a lot of money for me, Because like I just started being a land surveyor out here, just getting out on my own, new place or whatever. But I roll up to this guy's table, and he has 2 showcases, and literally both showcases were nothing but 93 Finest refractor. Look, that's it. That's it. I mean, stacks of multiple players, like Bo Jackson, a stack of probably 10, 15, I don't know. Huge stack of Bo Jackson. How this guy got all this, I don't know. But in the corner, he had a Frank Thomas, and I was like, hey, how much do you want for the Frank Thomas? He picked it up. He had 2 of them. And he's like, this was just crazy for this. I mean, even this period of time. But he's like $50, and I was like, and I'm looking at him like $50. So I was like, will you do both for 80? And he looks at me and he's like, yeah, I'll do both for 80. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, I mean, I wanted that card forever, but I never thought I was going to get it. Never.
Right.
It's one of those cards I was like, because even at the time, I think it was selling for a good 150, 200.
Wow.
And then then I went back to the table. I remember Chris. Chris. He's in the Thomas group. Chris Ray. He's in our Thomas group.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was there, and he had his Thomas collectibles. I mean, he had the best collection ever at the time, and he was set up at the show selling his Thomases. But he didn't have that, and he wanted to buy mine. But I said, hey, let's go back to the table. Let's see if he has another one because he had multiple of everybody. We went back. This is literally maybe 45 minutes after I bought the 2. And we go back. His case is completely clear. Someone bought them all out. And I wish it was me that would have done it. Because for what he sold me those 2 for, and he had a stack of Griffeys in there, Nolan Ryans. I mean, I wish I could turn. I mean, we all have them. I mean,
yeah.
But 2 cases just, he must have had the whole set. Well, multiple.
Wow.
Went to go buy them, see if he had more, and he had sold them all out. Man.
Yeah,
that's insane. I still remember talking to you, Brandt, in 2019 about whether the market was overheated because the economy overall improved in 2015, and if you were able to see the PWCC ending prices that went all the way back to 2010 and prior, you could see where it began to shoot up in 2015. And then you had 4 more years of basically exponential growth. Right at the end of 2019, we were still talking about whether these prices were too crazy and whether it's worth the money because I was just getting into this stuff. And I'm like, I'm used to 80s rookies and high grades and maybe the 93 refractor, but that's it. What is all this other stuff really worth? Is it just like 14 dudes buying the same cards? Is this really sustainable? And you're like, I don't know. These cards are so much more expensive than when I first got them. I can't even pick up any more cards. This was in 2019 that you were telling me this. So you were already like, man, I'm getting bored. yeah, I put up some of the hottest cards you could ever get in the Facebook group, but I'm not adding to that collection. So I have a question for you, but I want to say hello to a couple more people who are here with us. We got John Shu coming in. How's it going? Matt Workman in the house. In response to what you were talking about with your dad, we have Tri-City Taper saying, I used to make custom packs and reseal them for my son as well with a mix of brands and whatnot. Happy to know someone else had a dad who did the same thing. Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, I also collected because of my dad, but I didn't have a story like that. Matt Workman says, my oldest son is 8, and I've been really impressed with how much him and his friends have gotten into baseball cards this past year. I even my son, Ryan, interested in Kenny Lofton. That's great. That guy should be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
Yep.
I don't know. This is an inside thing, right? Brandt packages. Did you send your 24 karat in a top loader? No penny sleeve?
Oh man. All right, so that's Mike Weers. I always give him crap every time about so he bought from what I remember, I don't remember exactly what cards. It's kind of a crazy story. I don't remember what cards he bought from another dude in the Frank Thomas group, but there were some nice cards. I think some big ones he was after. And the dude mailed them in a small flat rate and didn't even take the package. And they showed up at his house, and empty package, obviously, flew out, whatever. So down the road, all the cards end up on eBay. All the cards. And the dude selling them got them from, he found out, we thought it was kind of a shady story because we all messaged him like, hey, this guy's missing those cards. And he bought them from a whatever USPS auction. You know, that's where he got them from. But I always tell him every time I send Mike a package, you know, especially when it's super high end, I'll be like, you know, it's this much with tape, or X amount with tape, or X amount with no tape. You know, because I always give him shit about it. Because I know it still stings him a little bit because I think there might be one card in there he might still need. But I mean, why you ship a small flyer?
That's hilarious. We got Ohio Lawyer weighing in here. He said he sold off twice in his life. Each time was related to a different stage in his life. Now that his kid is nearly grown, he doesn't see himself selling again in this later stage of life. And that's kind of what you were talking about when you said we're kind of in our 40s. And so we're nearing the halfway point and we want to be able to enjoy our lives. So that is also something that I've thought about when thinking about whether to move my cards. You got Kobe East Coast saying 40's the new 21. YOLO. But congrats on letting go. Brett Richards in the house. Junior saying he has a hard time selling even his doubles. So I used to too.
I used to be the same way.
Remember what that feels like, right? I don't want to sell even my doubles. Every single Bonds card is like absolutely precious to me. I guard it jealously. And sometimes I step back and I'm like, what is going on? And am I ever going to get to where you are now? And I know I am. It's just a matter of when. We got Matt Ryan coming in. Sounds like the famed 93 Finest Refractor backdoor overprinting situation. He likes the story. Matt Ryan's got a grip of those. And then, Sox Colt says, makes me laugh every time. Still missing like a out of 27 Pacific from that package.
Yeah, I knew he was missing one soon.
My question for you is related to timing the market, I guess. So how much did timing the market come into your mind? Were you like, if I sell my PMG for, I don't know how much you sold it for, are you comfortable giving me a ballpark?
About 10 grand.
Let's say about 10 grand, right? I sold it for 10 grand. I bought it for a microscopic fraction of 10 grand. And if the card ever goes to like 40, I won't feel bad about leaving 30 on the table. This is the time in my life that I think the card is worth more as money than it is as a keepsake. Did that figure into this at all? Did you see the spike, and are you saying that you see maybe Frank Thomas going down from this point? What did you think about?
I think it's all going to go up, but I think everything is going to go up, but not at the rate that we saw with all the new people from COVID coming. I don't think that kind of. But I don't think this card is going to go. I don't think the card will go from 10 grand to 40 grand in, let's say, the little blip of the COVID boom of 3 years. I don't see that happening. I don't think it could, I could be wrong, but I mean that went. Yeah, I mean, believe me, like I know at some point down the road, I'm gonna see these cards selling for way more than they probably intended. But right now for the offers and my return on investment, what I'm getting, I'm super comfortable letting them go. And it's allowed me to, branch out to, buying collections, making more money, and just branch out to a bunch of different things. So, um, I just don't, I know they'll go up, but, yeah, to answer your question, I don't think they'll spike. Because I want to say even before, let's say before COVID, I mean, that PNG probably selling around 1,500 somewhere in that area, and it leaped from 1,500 to 10 grand in what 4 years, 3 years. If it does that, in, 2028, if it sells for 40, I'll want a pew. But I mean, it could happen. But I'm totally happy with what I'm selling for what I sold it for, and I still got. I mean, quantity wise, I still have probably 90% of my collection. I've even scraped like just today. I just went in and was going through boxes that I haven't sold yet, and I had forgotten about so many. Because I mean, my main box was my 100 or less box. And I had a separate box for that. That's mainly what's been sold on. But I mean, I forgot about some of the not numbered cards that are super hard to get, like the hollow GRFX, from Ionics. I forgot that's not numbered. Yeah, I kept all those separate. I sold my Mirror Gold Select, but I still have all the other mirrors, the red, both reds, both blues. Um, just a lot of the stuff I still haven't even moved. And at this point, I've made enough to where I'm like, okay, I'm cool right now. I'm gonna keep that stuff for now. But eventually, if the right offers come in, they'll go. But I'm not. Before I was kind of pumping them out. I was like Matt said, once the floodgates opened, I was like, all right, I let this one go. Then I started kind of pumping them out on eBay pretty quick. But at this point, I've kind of halted up, and just kind of at a point where I definitely, in my mind right now, I'm not going to sell anything 96 prior because that's where childhood, that's where my childhood memories are. Because 97 is when I started high school baseball. I was started varsity my freshman year, and then in Florida, at least growing up in Florida, that's a full time. It's year round. It's not like we don't have winter, so that's all we have to do is play sport. So that's when collecting. I still would collect in the summers, but nothing like 96 and prior. 96. Me and my dad were want to say 92 to 96 were full throttle shows. You know, back then, shows were every weekend. So we'd travel the state.
I think that's the, I think that's the eternal struggle for player collectors. If I sell today, it's going to be worth 2 times tomorrow, and it's going to be worth 3 times a year from now. Just personally thinking back, all the times where you start entertaining thoughts, you're afraid of like, well, do I need the money today, or do I need the money in 5 years or 10 years? And in 10 years, I can sell it for 3 times the price. So I think that is always an eternal struggle of what to do and how much. Like I kind of dabbled with that during COVID when I was playing around with some cards, and I just that's something that I think I'm going to struggle with for a while, is when is the right time? Am I going to pass it on to my kids, or am I going to deal with it myself? But did you mostly sell on eBay, or did you have a lot of the private sales? What's the percentages you would say if eBay to private sales?
I'd say 50-50.
So half.
Probably half private, half. And you know what? It was always private deals are always hard for me, and a lot of people give me crap about it. But sometimes I feel like I could be leaving so much money on the table on a private deal because I don't know what these things are going to sell for because none of them have hit the open market in so long.
Right.
And a lot of people, and then when I made my initial post in the Frank Thomas group that I was deciding to sell out, I just said, hey, look, like no hard feelings to anybody, but I'm going to, sell the majority of these on eBay, just because I don't know what some of them are worth. And then the ones that I did sell private, I felt like I had such good offers that, as far as comping to other players or, even more recent Thomas sales that I couldn't turn them
But that's something that I was going to follow up with, but he kind of answered that question. Greg and Alan have talked to me about this, but I mean, think about you, Greg. I mean, you've put all that time and passion into collecting Tim salmon, right? Like, and you're pretty sure there's nobody else out there that collects them the way you do. But I think to myself, what would it take for Greg to actually sell the salmons? I feel like it would have to go to somebody who cares about salmon as much as Brandt cares about Frank, or Alan cares about Bonds, or me, A-Rod, or Flurry, right? I guess for me, it's different than Brandt. I was going to ask you, Brandt, like, were you able to let some go because you knew they were going to the right hands, because that was how I was able to completely let go. I had all these great memories with these cards with Greg and Alan and everybody else, but knowing they were going to like Jeremy or Matthew, who is building an incredible collection, it like allowed me to let them go. But was it more about the money because you knew you could get good money for it, or did that play a factor at all as far as knowing you could get your cards into the hands of a couple of your friends who collect Frank?
Well, the guy I sold most to privately has become a real close buddy. He's on Instagram, Johnny Kilroy. But I knew um, he was really into it for, he wasn't going to buy him, flip him. He's all about, like, he's full steam. I mean, I made him start, once I sold to him, now he's like full steam crank. So I felt good letting him, he gave me some good offers. He bought my 24K. Actually, he's bought a ton of others. But I did feel good letting him go to him. Because we had been doing, talking back and forth. It's kind of like, like Alan, he would reach out to me when he first started up his going for Thomas, because he said my Thomas Instagram was his checklist. So because he didn't, I mean, he's like, I didn't even know these things. So, we've been back and forth for quite a while now. And then, once I said I was gonna go, and he made some very strong offers. So, I didn't,
Let me
I was like, all right.
let me ask a question. So let's say you sell these cards to you don't, let's say you don't care. You're just selling cards to every Joe Schmo, versus this Instagram collector. And then you see that Joe Schmo has now suddenly thrown them up on eBay for 20,000 a piece. Does that bother you that it went to this person and he's putting or you're just completely like, it's your card, your possession?
It was my decision to sell. I could have said yes. I could have said no. And once the deal's made, I mean, hey,
Yeah. Okay.
nothing
I just,
I could do.
yeah, I get that. There's nothing you can do. It feels like such a dig into the collectors of the 90s, when you get this, you're looking for your card and it's up on eBay for $100,000 and you're just like, I'm never going to be able to afford that. And it's such like you don't get us, that's how I feel when I see those kind of cards on eBay. And I would personally, I don't know how I would feel. I've never been in that situation. If I sell a card and then it's up on eBay for $20,000, I don't know how I'd feel about it. So I just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah,
Because
I haven't seen. I mean, if I was to go on eBay right now and see one of the cards I sold listed for triple, I mean, it's not going to bother me. I mean, I haven't seen any, but then again, I don't look. And I mean, this is another thing. I was even thinking today. There was a point, when I was collecting Thomas, where every second, it was boom, hit my save searches, Frank Thomas, Frank Thomas, Frank Thomas. I was doing that literally 50 times a day, just
That's
so I
low.
don't miss something. Yeah, so I don't miss something, and I don't miss that at all, I mean, once a kid came into, I'm coaching this baseball team, we got football. I just didn't have time to do that anymore. I do miss it. I mean, I miss, sometimes I'll go in there and see what, has popped up. Or most of the time, most people are contacting me like, "Oh my God, did you see what that just sold for?" And I'm like, "Please don't be sold. I sold for half the price, but it hasn't been. It's just been
Yeah.
decent stuff." But yeah. I mean, I don't think if I saw anything listed for more that I sold, so be it. I'm happy with what I've got, and it's their car now. Do what you want with it.
Well, for me, I remember buying the 24 karat bonds in 2019 for $1,500, and at the time that was many times more than it had ever sold for. People thought I was crazy. I had to check my own pulse a little bit, make sure that I wasn't crazy. It was a lot of money. It's still a lot of money. $1,500 is a lot of money. So it's like one of those amounts where it's like you're approaching that point where if that car does go to zero, that's going to be a real kick in the gut, right? That's the problem with 90s prices. It got to the point where now, if you want to splash around, the amount of money you have to spend for superstars is like gut punch money if you actually have to go out and buy it, and it's worth nothing. And I think for a lot of people like myself, for example, I always have that in the back of my mind. What if this card goes to nothing? Will I be okay with that? Because I bought a bunch of rookie cards knowing I'm just guaranteed that it's going to go up. But with these 90s cards, I'm not sure what they're going to do. They've already gone exponentially in the past 3 years. What am I going to do? But of course, now I look and they're selling for 25, 30,000. And that's what I thought might happen, but the opposite could have happened. And so when you get in at 1,500, that's one thing. Like, okay, I can deal with that. But if I bought it for 30,000, I think it's going 10x personally. But if it doesn't, that's an unreal amount of money to drop on a cardboard that's worthless. So did you consider that when you were going through your process?
Yeah. I mean, I did consider that quite a bit. I just did 90s cards though. I just know, with them being so limited, especially the superstars. You guys, superstars. I mean, and Bonds, for example, I wish. I mean, I was always loved Bonds playing. I don't care juice or not juice. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer before the juice. But I wish I would have hopped on that train because I mean, he's slowly but surely surpassed Thomas in his sales. Like I put him below Jeter's, not even touching Bonds. What do you think? I mean, I don't pay that close attention to the market anymore, but I think Bonds is. I mean, he used to go for nothing, and now he's just like. Psh.
It's so much easier for me because in baseball, there's a lot more than like the back of the baseball card that goes into the value of the player, at least for people who watch them. It isn't until they're sort of dead and gone that people go back and look at the numbers. And then that's the thing that makes the difference between whether they're collected or not. So I knew coming in that, I mean, Bonds was woefully undervalued. I knew that he was undervalued by 100, 1,000 times. Just comparing Frank Thomas and Barry Bonds, who were both star players in the same era, and looking at the prices, I knew something was off. So I knew I was safe up to a point. But we're getting to the point now where, like, I just bought I'm in the process of buying a grand finale, and I paid $3,000 for it. And at that point, you're like, if this thing goes to zero, that's really going to suck. I probably should have bought it when it was $800 about 3 years ago. So I was like, how much higher can it go? We're getting to the point where $3,000 is still $3,000. But because it's Bonds, I believe that he's one of the few players from the era that are going to stand the test of time. So I feel like there's a backstop for me where I wouldn't feel that about other players necessarily. Stars that we grew up watching, idolizing, Piazza, all these guys, they were amazing to us. But what are people who didn't watch these guys play going to think about these players when they look back? And that is why I feel so safe with Bonds. But even then, like right now, splashing around in the modern market, like I don't even really know what I'm doing, to be honest. And if it goes to zero, I'm going to be pretty sad about the $3,000.
It's not going to happen.
There's no possibility. not going to zero. Definitely not a chance.
Alan's fear is what's driving him to buy more cards.
I remember,
To say it.
I like you so much now, Brandt, because I remember you speaking up for Bonds early on, being like, "I don't juice, no juice. I don't care. That dude should be in the Hall of Fame." I'm like, I like you a lot.
Should.
I watched most of the games, most of the Marlins games I ever went to were, for some reason, I don't think it was not because we picked you. They seem to always be playing the Giants on the weekend.
Yeah.
And I got to watch Bonds. I mean, I bet you I went to at least 25 to 30 Giants Marlins games, and including all the 97 was it divisional series that Giants?
Wild
I
card.
went to all those home games. The wild card.
Yeah.
I went to that whole series. But I got to watch him, and I got to probably watch him smash at least 8 home runs. That guy, I mean, I knew he was something else. He didn't need. The juice will make you, maybe hit it further, but it ain't gonna help you hit the ball.
Right. It's not going to help you make contact. It might do something after the contact. We got a couple of comments here that are right on point with us. We've got a Frank Thomas collector, Steve, saying, met Brandt around 2009. You should tell the story about the quantum leap. You said an all-time high in 2009. What was it, like $45 or something? Like,
no, it's actually way more than that.
How much was it?
Not way more. No, it's so I meant to snipe the card, I believe, for I think I was willing to go up to $250 because at the time that was one of my top wants was a quantum leap. And I actually put 2,500 as my snipe, and I didn't realize it.
Whoa.
I just went, and then I go back in to pay for it, and I think it was like 300 and something bucks. And at the time, that was a ridiculous amount of money. And dudes in we had what was it wasn't Blowout, it wasn't
Freedom Cardboard.
Freedom Cardboard. Yeah, there was one dude that posted, he's like, this is absolutely absurd amount of money. Like I was getting bagged on, dude, and I was like, I don't even think at the time I was having kind of a hard time affording that. I was kind of like, oh my god, because I remember opening my eBay and just being like, damn, did I really just do that? I mean, even 250. I thought that was a bid that just no one's gonna outbid. So, but yeah, I set the record price at like $350. Luckily, actually, let's have it.
I was curious.
Yeah.
I was curious.
Yeah, it's sorry about just saying it was $45. I'm always thinking in Barry Bonds terms. And in 2009, he was a disgraced player, public enemy #1. I'm pretty sure his cards were nearly worthless. So in 2009, you could probably get a Bonds for 50, 100.
Oh yeah. Right. That card was probably. I later went through this guy's bidding history. This is back when you could click on their stuff and you could see who bid, and it wasn't all protected like it is now. And you could see what they bid on with them. It was way different than it is now. But I found the same person that bid me up had bid on this dude's like 10 other items in like beauty department and like all these other categories. And I'm like, okay, so this dude that wanted this Frank Thomas card wanted some, whatever, girl shampoo and micro machines too. Like, come on. So, and I'm not going to call the dude out on here, but he's a pretty big seller on eBay. And ever since then, I stayed away from him because all of his cards would always go for way more than they should. Because at the time, that Thomas should have been probably, I would say, 125 max. Because when in the I remember opening the Freedom Cardboard, people are like, there's like a thread going, oh my god, who would pay for that much a card out of 50? Yeah, but now fast forward, it makes me look smart. But
So
actually, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have that card to this day because I've never had the chance to grab it.
yeah,
Since
I don't have that one either.
yeah, I mean the best after that, Mitch, Mitch Gasha, right? Great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he got one for I think $3.50. Buy it now,
Wow, wow.
and they honored it. They shipped it,
That's what
and
you're
that was
always
probably in
scared
like
about.
2012.
You're always scared when you get a good deal like that. Is somebody gonna make a bid, a message, a secret message, backdoor deal? What's gonna
Yeah.
happen? Is there any card that you're still looking for that you would like is your grail now?
I would really want to complete the Thomas collection. I mean, surprisingly, I only have 3 of them,
Okay.
but those cards were never um, they were never high on my radar because they're game used stuff, and I was like, whatever. It's I can care less about game used, but now it's such an iconic set. You know, I would like to complete that, and I'm gonna hold on to. I still have my Red Crusade. Trying to think. I've been doing. I was telling Greg that I was doing a lot of on card late '90s, early 2000s autos. I mean, I've been getting into that a little more. You know, just when I can. Or when I see them pop up, if I happen to search for them, I'll pick them up if I can. Trying to get the more rare ones. Like the golds out of 25, stuff
Yeah.
out of 50 or stuff
So,
like that.
we all have certain grail cards. Is the Frank Leaf collection is that your grail? Do you consider that the grail now since you're kind of moving on from the higher stuff that you sold?
I would say the no names would be my grail, but I've whiffed. I've had my opportunity at it, and kind of like Alan, I guess I don't know your second story with um your fusion, but twice I got done dirty with it, and it's just kind of one of those cards that I feel like. I mean, I'd love to have it, but what it's at now. I mean, what's everything I've sold? I guess I could buy one, but there goes all my money I made when I sold for. You know. So, and my
Yeah,
buddy Chris White, he just picked one up, a nice one up.
I saw
Um,
that. I saw that. That
yeah, I mean,
that is a card.
I would love to have one, and I've had other shots at them. I guess at times I could afford them, but I was always like, what if I buy this and, for instance, I didn't have the Red Crusade yet. What if the Red Crusade comes up and I deplete myself and I'm sitting here with this non-shiny? Because the looks are always more important to me. I mean, I know that card's iconic, but it's a 90 tops. It's dull. It's dull looking. It's not as
After
shiny. It's not numbered to 25.
It's one of the most
So
beautiful cards that exist in the world. That card is freaking amazing. I want one so bad. I love that card. Yeah, I love that card. So I hear you. Um,
yeah.
got a few more comments here I want to get to. We got Ohio Lawyer saying, I, for one, would like to see a few more Larkin collectors liquidate their collections. I think that's right. I mean, I've heard the theory that, we all live in an ecosystem, and when you let your PC, somebody's going to appreciate a few of those cards at least a little bit more. Some may get flipped, others may get hoarded, but some of those cards are going to get to their end users where, they're not going to move them until they're like 70 years old. So I think that's a great point. We got Junior saying he played basketball, high school varsity, from 90 to 01.
Baseball, right?
Oh, baseball. Okay. What school did you go to?
Coral Shores and Alvarado.
Got it. We've got a comment from IG. Bonds was a Hall of Famer when he was on the Pirates. I would agree with that. If you look at the stats, he probably makes the Hall of Fame just on his Pirate stats alone, which is kind of mind-blowing. And then we have Toby East Coast, who put a question to the panel. He says, curious on your collective thoughts, who can Frank Thomas and Barry Bonds compare to in terms of NBA players of the same era?
Frank Thomas, Jordan.
Yeah, MJ.
I mean, Bonds, Jordan. I mean, that's what I think. Obviously, what are you going to say? It's your favorite player, right? I mean, I think Bonds was by far the most dominant player of his era. Is not even close. I think it's arguable. I talked to this to Greg. I mentioned this to him, and I said, "Hey, Bob Costas said that Bonds was more dominant at baseball than Jordan ever was at basketball." And Greg was like, "What are you talking about, dude?" I want some of what you're smoking, right? So,
Yeah, I think, maybe a Shaq type. I would say
Yeah.
somebody on that level of being just a dominant player who commands a lot of money. So
Thomas or Bonds?
I would think like a Shaq situation seems right for like a Bonds. And yeah, I'm trying to think of a
That's a
second
hard question.
player.
That's a hard question.
I know it is. It
Like, are
really
we
is.
looking at value here? Are we just talking about value, or are we having to compare like personalities? Because for me, like value wise, I'm thinking who's under Jordan. Okay, so then you think of that group under Jordan, right? There's
Yeah, right.
Kobe is right there, so that doesn't count. But then you've got Garnett, Iverson, guys that were flashy that had a big following before they were just random collectors. I mean, like who do you say? Like Iverson was the first one that came to mind because it's like he sits like below Kobe and Jordan, but he's very popular still, if not getting more popular, right? He's kind of coming back, having a resurgence of popularity. I don't know for Bonds, like value wise, I don't know.
I mean, I don't think baseball is ever going to catch basketball, but I see Bonds rising to the top of all '90s players. It's going to happen sooner than you think. I just think that a lot of the money right now is coming from the nostalgia of us having seen these players. We haven't factored in those people who didn't see these people play and are just collecting baseball cards and don't know their stories and don't know how you're supposed to feel about them back when they were playing. And I think that eventually Bonds is going to rise to the top. I would compare Bonds to Jordan, but I think he's a slow burn, slow riser. I think he will get there. I think he'll surpass Jeter. I think he'll surpass Griffey, and I think he'll stay there till the end of time. That is what I think is going to happen. But I won't be there to see it. I'll probably be long gone by the time that happens.
You know what? I have one collective question for everybody, and I wanted to ask it earlier, but this sounds like a perfect time since we're already on one of those topics. I want to hear from everybody. Brandt's talked about it. Alan's now talked about it. Greg and I probably think it, but like, what is going to keep the 90s cards rising when we are all in our 60s and 70s? How are the people that are now kids, when they get to our age, why would they even keep collecting? Like, what is it going to take? Because as a teacher, I look at what I'm hearing from kids when we were young collecting. Nobody's talking about Barry Bonds. The only player I see and hear about is Griffey. That's it. Maybe Jeter, right? So what is it? How are these cards going to maintain value? Greg, I want to go to you first because you collect a plethora of different things, but your main focus is Frank and Tim Salmon. So start with you. How
Yeah. I am a firm advocate on this, and I've talked to Alan about it. And the way that this happens is by spreading the information to our future generations. You have we used to watch Sports Center, and we gained all this information from Sports Center, ESPN, Baseball Tonight. You're just watching the players. You're seeing highlights of older players. Your parents are telling you about these players that were very influential to them. Maybe they collected, and so they're passing on. Brandt mentioned not having a connection to Mickey Mantle, and that's true. We don't, but you learned about the stories, you read about it, you learned about it. ESPN talked about it. They were just this like iconic video clips. They were iconic names on lists. And so it just you just learned about them through just the course of history. And I think the important thing that has to happen is we have to tell our kids, we have to show our kids they're not watching ESPN and Sports Center like we did. So it's really a passing along of the information so it doesn't just die out, right? Because if that information isn't known, then it dies off. And so I think one of the important things that we have to remember is to tell the stories, show the things, because our kids, want to replicate us, right? They try to, if you're out there playing baseball, they want to pick up a bat and a ball. So if you're watching something, if you're doing something, if you're collecting something, I know my daughter, when I'm looking at my cards, comes in and is like, "Oh, that's the guy that you like, Tim Salmon." Yeah, it is, and so she knows about that, and that's really the thing. You have to like implement them into your hobby, and then later on, they're going to say, "Oh, I know Frank Thomas. I remember my dad showed me all these things," and so it trickles on. But if you close that door for them, then they're not going to know.
Yeah, I mean that's a fascinating question. Really tough to answer for me. For me, I think the way I think about it is when I first heard about baseball, everybody told stories about Ruth. Everybody told stories about Mantle and Mays. Those were the three names I heard. Hank Aaron also because he had the home run record, and that's it for the old guys. Like eventually you heard about Clemente, eventually you heard about Jackie Robinson. People that talked about baseball when I was first learning about it, it was Ruth and it was Mays and it was Mantle. And I think that Bonds is going to be one of those players. I know that it seems ridiculous right now to say that, but I think that ultimately he's going to be seen that way in history. So his cards, they're going to be pursued as Americana. So you don't have to pass down Bonds' name. He was reviled during his age. He holds some of the most prestigious records of all time. He basically got pushed out of the game in disgrace. There's all sorts of stories and villainy around him. I don't think there's ever going to be a need to sort of pass that down. Now, JT Snow, on the other hand, or Jeff Kent, who I think should be a Hall of Famer, those are people I'd have to tell my kids about because nobody's going to talk about them. And the only way the next generation behind the youngest folks who naturally collected the era because they watched the era, I mean, the only way that happens is exactly what Greg says, which is to sort of share the knowledge. The 90s have the advantage of being beautiful cards, the rarest era by far of any baseball card era, except for maybe some obscure 1800s card. Besides that, there are natural advantages to the 90s, but there's so much shady stuff going on as well, right? There are counterfeits and there are duplicates and you don't know what's going on. So it's very difficult to get into. It cuts both ways, but the key is to share the knowledge. And if we continue to share the knowledge, that'll keep the hobby healthy, whether you're talking about 90s cards or just cards in general.
What do you think, Brandt?
Yeah, that's also a very hard question for me to answer. I mean, I do agree with Alan that, when you look at the record book, you see Bonds got the most runs. He does. As far as people like Frank Thomas, man, it's like, I guess I would have to know right now who is pushing the prices for the Mantles, the DiMaggios. Who's pushing? What age group is pushing that up?
Mm-hmm.
Because then I don't know that answer because I'm not into the vintage thing. I just know. I mean, I guess if I was a multimillionaire, I would have a 52 mil just because that's the card to go after. But as far as people like Frank Thomas, I mean, I know I'm biased, but I think he's just the stretch he had from 93 to 97 is so, the best stretch almost baseball has ever seen. But he kind of petered out pretty hard, later in his career. For him to keep going, I mean, I know my son, obviously he walks in the room, that's all he sees. I mean, I got 3 of these stand-ups that are out of the camera. It's a hard question. It's like, who's going to push them up once we sell off, once we're, well, I'm like, everybody our age is ready. It's such a hard answer.
I keep thinking to myself too, like, what are the younger kids into, right? Like, Brent, you've got a younger son. Alan, you've got kids at home that collect. Greg, you've seen which cards your daughter reacts to probably more than others, right? If you were to just lay 10 cards out, which one do you like the most? The shinier, flashier cards. You think about the Pokemon cards and the modern basketball, all the Panini stuff, right? That most of the kids are showing up with at shows to flip and whatnot. It's mostly like the shinier cards, right? That are always graded or whatever. I feel like design wise, at least, the 90s cards are always going to grab your attention. And then once people grow up and realize how much more unique they are than the same thing that Panini's putting out every single year in basketball and then tops in baseball for the most part, maybe then they'll have to realize, like many people did that got back into collecting, oh yeah, I broke modern boxes and then I found the 90s and I've never looked back. I feel like it's got to keep happening, right? Just visually. That's the first thing I come to. So you think about all the things all of us said, all those things put together. I mean, not to take anything away from Alan, but I think your bonds prices are safe. You're based upon all those things. I think people are going to continue realizing, along with all these other factors, that they're actually pretty amazing.
Well, you have to make sure that people care about, that's the thing, is like people have to care about this in order to buy it. And so I just want to make sure that people care about it later on, because it matters to me. I just need to know that I'm passing this along. Like, it matters. Please believe me.
When we all decide to sell, we should all set up a booth. We're going to all be like, 70 years old, 65 years old, set up at the National. You're not allowed to buy this card until you prove to me that you care about this card. Alan, did you want to run through a few more comments here real quick?
I did. There was one on point here from Kobe East Coast. We were taught that vintage cards are valuable based on condition because there were so many printed. That's the only way to distinguish them. We'll teach that 90s cards are valuable based on rarity and condition, but rarity alone. I mean, you don't even have to consider condition. It was manufactured and it was successful. They've tried to replicate it in successive eras, and it's not the same, right? Everything is sort of a bad facsimile of the previous era. We've got Kevin Connolly saying, in response to Ohio Lawyer's earlier comment, where Ohio Lawyer said the same reasons I have a bunch of 50s and pre-war cards. I never saw them play, but love the Reds and got into their history. Kevin Connolly says, Ohio, same here, but I've been watching the Mariners since day one. We didn't have any history like the Reds. And then we've got, I think Kevin Connolly saying, just show the video where I think it was Bonds who was walked with the bases loaded.
Crazy, man.
And it was the right decision. Who was that did it? Was it Marty? I can't remember.
Alou, right? Wasn't it Moises Alou's dad or something like that?
It's a famous name. I can't remember the guy now who did it, but it worked because the next guy flied out. Is middle agers? Do we have another 40 years of collecting 90s guys? They aren't going anywhere anytime soon. I agree with that. I think the runway for just people who watched and loved these players, you got another 40 years to go before you have to worry about that. We're going to be pretty old by that time.
Well, we go to card shows and you see the vintage guys, and to be fair, most of the vintage guys are 60, 70, 85 years old. And I talk to them, but they tell me of a simpler time, and we talk about the vintage cards, but I don't really see any 20-year-olds with vintage stuff. It's the older guys who are just kind of sitting in their corner. They either have like the big thing or they have small things with random rings and other posters, but they are still at the card shows, and they do have a bigger representation than 90s. And so when you go to these card shows and you see all these old guys with vintage, that's going to be us with 90s cards, right? Because we are going to have our representation. And right now it's just kind of like we're in this gray area of modern, vintage, and then two tables have 90s cards.
For sure. It'll be really interesting to see, for sure. But hey, I had an idea. I thought it would be fun. We only got a few minutes left, that we could do kind of like a quick rapid fire thing for Brandt here before we head on out, if you guys want. I mean, I have a career where I have to come up with things on the fly. So I figured, Brandt, we could all ask you like one or two questions each, just like quick response type things to kind of wrap it up. Really been awesome to talk to you. I'm curious, other than the Leaf Gold Stars, tell me another card that's untouchable, right? Like early 90s, that's got a memory or something attached that just is never going anywhere. That's for sure going to your son.
I will go with man. There's so many I want to say from 92 to 94 that really stick with me. I'll go the 95 Elite, that deckled edge, the one I traded to SP set for it.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I think money talks really loudly. So if somebody paid you $1 million for any card, it doesn't matter how much emotion you have in that card, you're going to get rid of it, right? There's a line. $1 million is crazy, but everybody has a line for every single card. And sentimentality only goes to a point, and then the dollar signs matter more. So I think that's just how it is, and that's how it is for all cards and for every collector. I had a question for you, Brandt. I was wondering if somebody gave you all of your high-end 90s inserts back today for free, would you keep them now as keepsakes because they were free, or would you flip them again because they're worth so much darn money right now?
Oh, I would hold on to them because I already got my money. If I could keep the money I used to sell them with, yeah, I'm good. I'll keep them. Yeah, I'm fine. I wouldn't have any reason to sell them. Yeah, I'd keep them. But then, I mean, I guess if they do the rise like they did from COVID, they do that. Yeah, I'm selling them again.
I would too. Yeah, at that point.
Yeah.
Give a piece of that to the person who gave them to you for free, though, right? I think.
I'd have to break them off a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So you can't collect Frank Thomas. Who do you start over with? What player?
Going to be what you talk about from the 90s era or from?
Yeah. You can't start over with Frank. You got to pick a new player. Who do you start over with from scratch?
Probably Bonds.
Bonds. Good answer.
It probably would be Bonds, but at least as far as I thought he was always an incredible player. I always thought he was a dick as far as attitude, and I saw it in person. But as far as what I saw on the field, for sure Bonds. And like Alan said, I wish I knew a lot of people were going to look past the steroid thing, because I always did. I never gave a shit about these steroids because I knew MLB knew what they were doing. As far as the same goes with McGuire, so they knew what was going on. Come on, these guys didn't just start jacking 60-something home runs out of nowhere. They let them do it because it brought money, and then Major League Baseball turns their back on, and I think I really pisses me off when I get into the subject. But if I had to start with someone, definitely probably be Bonds.
I think that would be the smart money play, if nothing else. I still think he's one of the most undervalued players in all of sports. He's just a hidden secret. But then 90s cards are one of the best hidden secrets in the whole hobby. So you're talking about layers and layers of this stuff. That's why I sleep a little bit better at night dropping that kind of money on cards, and they're minuscule compared to what other people are dropping these days. So
yeah, thank goodness Barry Bonds didn't play basketball. You'd be in some serious trouble, Alan. you'd have to sell the house or something, bro. That would be
tough. He'd be talking to us from a tent right now.
Yeah.
I would collect JT Snow or Jeff Kent or something like that.
Jeff Kent, baby, let's go. All right, my last question is this one. With your extensive knowledge of the 90s and being in that Facebook group too, you've seen a lot of people come and go without mentioning names or whatever, but the popularity of certain cards and or players rise and fall, right? As of right now, excluding the obvious, is there a player from the 90s that you feel should get more recognition? Maybe not from collectors, but just in general, a 90s player that you feel like, man, how is this guy not collected more or talked about more?
Oh, I think by far, and I've only noticed this because I recently bought a full collection of his, but Mike Piazza, I feel, is what his cards go for compared to at least what I'm used to. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. What his cards go to, compared to Frank Thomas, what I'm used to selling Frank Thomas for, I think is ridiculous cheap. I mean, I'm talking some, maybe selling for 20% of Frank Thomas, which I think he should be at least minimum 60 to Frank Thomas. But I think he should be even, more even with Thomas. No, I mean 60. I think short, but I think he's well under. And I will say, Greg Maddux, just because he's a pitcher, they sell way below. I think Greg Maddux should be, as far as what he was able to do on the mound, and you see his stats, he should be up near Peter Griffey, if you ask me. I mean, one of the best pitchers. I mean, I got to watch him so many times in divisional series with the Marlins, and that dude, he didn't even throw that hard. I mean, he was just, he just location. And then another player that I think is disgustingly undervalued, Tony Gwynn.
No.
That guy, disgustingly. I mean, for that, his stats that come up with Maddox is like they'll do. You'll see the posts that different people do, and I think what this crazy stat was, like he faced Smoltz, Maddox, Glavine, whatever. I don't know, a ridiculous amount of times. He only struck out like twice, or something. It's like, I mean, his stuff, because I've been selling some of his stuff recently. I think Wynn is so undervalued.
I agree with you, especially on Maddox. Especially on Maddox. He's the best I ever saw. When he was on TBS, we all saw like 50 games, and they were all art.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, we were all forced to watch it.
Yeah,
we were.
Or you could watch the Cubs. Those are your two options.
Yeah.
So I have a quick question, I guess. Now that you're selling cards more, rather than collecting them and compiling them, would you say that you have your relationship with cards, you like them more, or you when you were collecting, or would you say you have a closer relationship emotionally and sentimentality with the cards that you work with now, just because the excitement of wheeling and dealing?
To be honest, I'm kind of getting sick of looking at baseball cards on these things. It's kind of like now it's kind of like a thing for extra income. I mean, it's helped out a lot, financially to be able to do it. But, sometimes it's like I got this whole big stack after we're done. I have to scan all these. And I know you guys know my scans. I'm so anal on them. Like, they got to be perfect to go on eBay. If there's a little fiber, I have to redo it. And, the scanner I use is not super fast. It's like, and it takes a long time. I got to do the front and back of them, and I'm just dreading the scanning them. And then tomorrow I got to list them. And then I just had another dude bring me, I don't know, I got a box of like 50 slab Pokemon I have to do. I've got, I can't really shift my, I don't know, maybe I can. The whole pile, like, those are all top of all those cards piled up right there. Those are all cards I have to sell. So it's just.
So I have a buddy who was in the comic books when I was in the comic books, and he moved on to pressing and submitting comics to CGC, and now he cannot stand comic books, but it's his job. So, like you kind of mentioned, not looking forward to scanning and listing these things and getting sick of baseball cards. Well, my buddy who was a comic collector with me now cannot stand comic books. And that's always a fear of mine, is turning your hobby into a career and not wanting to be involved anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I never really thought that would, I can't say it's to the point where I hate them. I can't stand them, but it's getting like, it's like, I also have a full-time job, I'm a land surveyor too. So, coming home, some days when I'm trucking up hills all day long, or like yesterday, first step of the day, I slipped into a ditch in 2 foot of water and it's 45 degrees out, not in the best of mood when I get home. So I never thought I would actually. I didn't even think I would get this way. Like, I hate even looking at them. Like, sometimes I come home and some stuff I bought, a big lot I bought off of someone will be in the driveway. No, like, I got to get on to doing that. But I did just get a bunch of comics, and I think for now on, I'm going to tell everyone I sell for, because I've been selling any type of collectible. And I've been consigning any type of collectible, and I'm gonna only do baseball cards because they're small. They're small like this. They're not big, bulky. I did sell a huge collection of Funkos. That was the worst thing ever because you have to box them up, tape them up. These I throw in a bubble mailer, put cardboard around them, put them in team bags, slip them in a bubble mailer, put label, boom. And Funkos, you got to box up, tape up. Oh, nightmare. And
Well,
you have to buy the supplies.
Well, I'll say if you're getting the comics, that's a different beast because you have to make sure all the pages are intact, the staples, the covers. There's so much to comics, and it is
And
not.
and I'm blind. I'm blind about it because I got the whole set like of every Walking Dead, the first one all the way through. I don't know how many there is, like a bunch of them. And I'm supposed to send them to CGC, and I'm kind of, like I've never done it before. So I that's what I was going to do tonight is YouTube how to package and send them to CGC because I've never sent a comic in. I've never even read a comic in my life. So I know nothing about them. But I mean, like I said, I see the grading on them. I don't know what that entails. I haven't really looked into it yet. I know it's white pages.
Yeah.
This guy's never read them. I know that. So he's bottom put them straight in like the top loader. So,
Quick question for you, Brandt. If people want to buy cards from you, where can they go?
My eBay retro _ sports _ co. That's my eBay, and then my store name is Retro Sports Co. So I just run auctions. Pretty much, I don't do any buy it nows. Always auctions. I just always felt like auctions were better. I guess you could say that for another episode.
Right. Yeah,
I always make sure they're rare enough to run at auction.
Right.
I'll run some common base.
Well, it's still pretty crazy. I'm sure all of us share the same feeling that to have somebody that was the staple of the '90s group decide that it's time to move on. In my mind, I think it's not going to be the last person that goes down that route. I mean, we didn't a Ripken collector do the same a couple years ago, either Barry or somebody else. I think you're starting to see it happen a lot more when the values are dictating that you might need to think about finding a different home for your cards. I mean, if Tim Salmon cards started approaching the realm of Frank Thomas cards, then Greg would probably have a really difficult decision. I mean, right? That's what makes it so fun to collect them because it's affordable, But then, like, what do you do when it hits that point, right? When a Tim Salmon PMG is $5 to 10 grand, then what? So I can't say that I blame you, Brandt, and I don't think any of us would say that, but still pretty fascinating to hear about.
Well, now I mean I've sold my Thomas stuff, but now I've got myself chasing these high-end '90s sets. Like I'm working on the Skyline set right now. Boy, I think 3 away from completing that. But I got to keep collecting somehow. It's just as far as Frank Thomas. Yeah, it's like I got to have something to chase. I guess it's always the chase that the funnest part. I mean, as far as and then once you get it, it's just not as fun. Once I never thought I was going to own the 24K. Once I got it, I was like, okay, what do I do now? It's on the Mirror Gold. I make a trade with Mike Weirs. I get the Mirror Gold. I'm like, I never thought I'd have it. What now? Then never thought I'd have the Red Crusade. Boom, got the Red Crusade. okay, then that's kind of. I think once I landed the Red Crusaders, I was like, okay, there's really nothing left. I mean, besides the crazy, perfect tens or
Yeah, golden
the one
anniversary.
stuff like that. I just know is not probably the probability is not
Yeah.
good.
Right.
The chase was over, man. So.
And that's something we're all going to have to fight eventually. I mean, like Greg said, he's branched out, and that's one thing he's helped motivate me. I know I'm not going to be able to get certain cards in any of my PCs, so it's like go find other avenues that keep it fun. You got to keep the hobby positive. The golden anniversary. If you were to wait until the golden anniversary popped up, any of us in here, we wouldn't be buying anything. So
Nope.
you got to be realistic about that and find ways to keep it fun. Alan, again, it's awesome to see that you got that atomic in, man. We will definitely have to hear a little bit more about that in a future episode about that whole drama thing. But it's awesome that you got it. That feeling of getting that big card in is an irreplaceable feeling. But then again, after you get it, it's like, okay, what's next? We have to find ways to like sit and enjoy in card. There goes the snowplow, by the way. Hello, snowplow. But anyway, so thanks again for popping in. Alan, do you have any closing thoughts before we say goodbye for the night?
I'm just really glad that I got to talk to Brandt, that we all got to talk to Brandt, sort of get into your mind a little bit, find out what makes you tick. You are like Matt said, one of the most respected figures in the group. So I don't think you'll ever lose that perch. So this was great. Thank you.
How about yourself, Greg? Any goodbyes, closing thoughts?
I'm one step closer to being a better Frank Thomas collector. So I appreciate Brandt coming on and talking with us. I have a lot of respect for him, and again, I do appreciate you coming on with us and talking Frank and just we always hear people like selling their collections, but it's really nice to get into the nitty gritty of it and just hear your thoughts and why and just your story. So I thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate you inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And Brent, I will just say, I know that I came and I left and I've kind of slowly come back, but I just wanted to say, not just for myself, but for all of us that have kind of made our way into the 90s, you've been so kind and generous with the knowledge that you already had and helping, with reasonable prices and cards to chase, cards to stay away from, cards that you can get later. I mean, you were just so huge in guiding me in the right direction when I first got in here, along with some other people, Rodney to name another one. But thank you for being so generous with that, because I know not everybody's like that. I could tell that you enjoy helping others enjoy collecting the 90s, and so I think that's been great. And I hope that continues no matter where you're at, collecting Frank.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Yeah, man, I'm always up for people, I always appreciate people reaching out to me, asking me my opinions, what I thought of this, what I thought of that, because when I was, started up, I really didn't have anyone to. This is before Facebook. We had the forums, but none of us. I guess the forums didn't allow you to be as close as we all are on Facebook.
Right.
And you can private message people, but it wasn't a text that went off on your phone right away. You just back. So I had no guidance. So I was just out there, swinging with a blindfold on, like, all right, I guess you gotta go for this one. It's 100 or less, I'm going for it. So yeah, I always like to give people, people ask me for advice. I love giving them my opinion or advice. I went through it.
Well, yeah, you set a good example, and I think we all take pride in that. When anybody reaches out to any of us, we've kind of carried that on. I know that Greg and Alan do a great job of talking with people and helping motivate them and getting them excited about the 90s. And it's great to talk to somebody who kind of spearheaded that for so many of us. So, Alan, is there any other comments you want to get to, some goodbyes? And before we head out of here, I know we've got a few people saying goodbye, but up to you, dude.
Let's give everyone their due real quick before we get out of here. Thanks to Brandt, Willem. Great episode, wonderful points of view. I appreciate it. Glad you enjoyed it. Brent Richards agrees. I think we would all agree that Randy Johnson is undervalued. That guy was a beast.
Mullet.
I think I'd have to collect him to use a giant for about 4 seconds. Ryan Fitzgerald says that I find the cards I like are great, but the other 90 to 95% cards that exist are really interesting to me. That's true of card topics too. If you guys aren't talking about 90s cards on camera, I actually don't really care that much. Ohio Lawyer saying, thanks for the weekly therapy session, guys. Always great to see you. Kevin Connolly shouting out the rainbows, saying that he traded a PMG for a golden anniversary. God, I don't know if I could do that. James Stinger says, it's why I love being a team collector. I was something to work on. Old, new, big names like Junior, small names like Cora, never bored. I think that's how it go. You got Sox Colts saying, Brand, I'll send my golden anniversary if I ever do. And Matt's giving us some big ups. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, 2 comments from me. One, we got over 30 live viewers. The first time we've ever had that on this show, even when we had Gene and Mike Kramer, first time over 30 live viewers. So thank you to everybody who jumped in, got involved in the chat, or just watched. We all appreciate you. And also Jory Cora mentioned in the chat, like I've peaked. There's nowhere else to go from here. So
yeah, I loved him on the White Sox. Man, I loved Jory Cora.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah, and we're really happy that you let him come to Seattle. He was a fan favorite for many years. But yeah, Brandt, thanks again for coming on and hanging out with us. We look forward to hopefully having you back on again sometime. And then, of course, Alan, thanks for rallying and making it here. Appreciate it. And Greg, thanks for staying up late doing this with us. We appreciate it. Love the shirt. Can't wait to see him in a movie again someday.
Yeah,
hopefully.
me too.
All right. Well, from snow-filled Sitka and everywhere else, we hope you guys have a great night, and we'll catch you next Saturday. Take care, everybody.
All right. Thanks, guys.